everyone. So this is going to be a little bit different than my other episodes. Actually, I've been getting way too carried away just doing Quake template after Quake template and all of them being 50 minutes long, which is absolutely ridiculous. It's time to do something a little bit more bite size. So this is a little segment I'm just going to bring up is something that's been on my mind for a little while, and it's I don't know if you're technically familiar with the humans need not apply thing that's been going around for a while is basically automation replacing human beings at the workplace. Um, but a lot of us probably think, like, is that going to really affect the game industry? Well, first thing is that it's not going to be how you think it's going to be. When people talk about like, oh, robots are taking our jobs, they're not thinking in proper terminology. They're not thinking. They're thinking that there's literally going to be a robot there, and in actuality, it could be the most innocuous thing possible. If you look at a soda machine at a 7-Eleven or a little like corner store or something like that, you know what I'm talking about. They replaced a human being with that object, and that's really all it comes down to. But as technology has been getting better and better, we've been seeing this trend to a greater degree, increasingly, and now it is actually getting to a scary point right now. If you look at the most common jobs in America right now, and I'm sure this applies abroad as well. Like you'll see jobs like truck driver, and these being like one of the most common jobs. Well, we're also seeing self-driving trucks, and we're also seeing things like that. Okay, so you're thinking, does this apply to the game industry too? And I think it does. And I don't think it's not going to be robots. The first thing we need to go over is, what do we know about the game industry right now? Well, we do know that there are a lot of really, really big games that are super popular with lots and lots, like huge audiences, and development teams too. And some of these games, they're just, the teams are thousands of people, maybe even more in some cases. There are like really, really huge game companies. Okay. Well, let's take a look at a lot of games. I know this doesn't apply to all of them. It definitely doesn't apply to all of them. But if you look at Halo, uh, Witcher 3, hell, Metal Gear, Call of Duty, Fallout, anything, Elder Scrolls, hell, even Doom 4. If you look at a lot of really, really big name games right now, the big AAA ones, Destiny, and stuff like that, what you'll notice is that their engines are old. They're very old engines. And now you're probably thinking, well, the engines are updated, right? They are updated, and the answer is yeah, they're definitely updated engines. That's the thing to keep in mind here. I know a lot of people will criticize like the developers of Call of Duty. They'll say, oh, it's just a Call of Duty 4 engine, and they just rehash it every year. Actually, no, that's not true. It's half true, but it's not. It's 100% true in the fact that the engine itself actually is changing, and that they are actually updating and rewriting the engine. But that's not the important part to keep in mind here. Okay? These engines, they get updated. They'll like replace the AI. They'll replace the lighting. The rest might stay the same. They'll replace the renderer. They'll add something. They'll put something into it, and it's just like this big engine that's been around that still ends up having code in it from God knows how old. Still ends up sitting in there. But every single time they replace these things, like if you're familiar with when Skyrim first came out, They're like, we completely rewrote the entire engine, like it's all completely new, everything. And then you open up the tools, and I don't know if you're familiar with the GAC, if you're familiar with Bethesda's development tools, you probably opened up Skyrim's tools and noticed a few similarities. And you want to know why? Because as these big companies are updating, they're updating their tech. They're still thinking within the same box, and it's a trend. It's actually something that you can really see. And I guarantee you that you look at Call of Duty 4 Radiant and you look at Black Ops 3 Radiant, sure, they probably have a lot of new stuff, but it's Radiant. It's fucking Radiant. If you look at a lot of these things, it usually falls within that same characteristic. So these big companies are still thinking in very, very, very old ways. So you're probably thinking, why bring this up? Aren't these engines going to stay the same forever or whatever? Yeah, they're just going to stay the same forever, right? Well, I don't think so. And that's based on one commonology. Look at how, like, the way id Software has kind of fallen off, right? id Software is no longer producing tech that everybody wants anymore. Right, but when they were, it created a huge boom, which just went in every direction. If it wasn't for id Software, we probably wouldn't be playing first-person shooters. It's literally that ridiculous. And I mean, there were other companies, Epic came in and they did it, but it had a really big part in it. And every single iteration of the Quake engine just got milked for everything it's worth, all the way up until now. And all of this technology, after id Software kind of fell off, and they kind of have, because I'm sorry, id Tech 5 isn't really that great. I mean, if you look at it, it's not so great. Rage's engine was not impressive. Let's just be honest. And nobody gives a fuck if the surfaces are unique. Nobody cares. If you look at how that fall off has happened, you'll notice that people are now criticizing continuously that Call of Duty is, still the same engine. And like I was just saying, that yeah, sure, you can get away with saying that, but I guarantee you that if id Software had not fallen off, and if id Software had managed to keep making new engines, Call of Duty would have been updating to every single one of those engines as they came out if id Software had done well on that front. Think about it. But there's almost like a real struggle at this point in time to innovate on the front of these 3D engines. A lot of them. I mean, even if you look at Battlefield, even if you look at Star Wars, the new Star Wars, it's still using that tech. And the changes now have become these little incremental things rather than, holy shit, it's a completely new thing. Which I've even I'm guilty of this. I couldn't even honestly tell you what the new next best engine would actually, like a true next generation engine. Even looking at Witcher 3 could have come out and played roughly the same if even it just wouldn't have looked as pretty on an older engine. They could have still done it. So with that said, each one of these engines for all of these different, each one of these engines for all of these different games are taking advantage of a handful of features that are genuinely next generation. Well, for example, I can't even really say next generation because a lot of these features are fucking old as dirt, but they're really, really revolutionary in how they affect the entire development process. The only catch is that not everybody's doing them all at the exact same time. So you have things like hierarchical instancing, multiplayer development environment, in other words, people working together, and you're probably thinking well, how does hierarchical instancing have an effect? When you have it at your disposal and it's streamlined, it changes how you build every fucking polygon. It changes everything. from the ground up, and it makes the job faster and easier. Okay? But not everybody's using it. So I could safely say right now, Call of Duty modified not even the Call of Duty engine, but just the tools, Radiant, in order to be able to do this one thing really well, and it's fucking amazing what it can do. So now you have a multiplayer development environment, right? Well, nobody's using that. Except if you look at Minecraft, you'll have a team of maybe 4 people build an entire fucking city, based off of some random thing, and these amazing, like, huge servers with thousands of people all working together building stuff, just level designing, all at the same time, in unison with each other, watching it happen as they do it, like, so that by itself, like, oh well, 2 people working on the same thing. It's the mentality that changes. If you were to have a development tool that works in that way, then you end up thinking about everything completely differently. How you work with people is a complete change, and how you think about the process, which that is the thing that's important to keep in mind with how different everything becomes. Okay, you take a little thing like hierarchical instancing and it changes everything. Now you have multiplayer development environment. Oh shit! So now nobody's combined those two. Okay. Now there's a new thing. This is relatively new, and don't confuse this with just regular procedural like world creation, because that shit's existed for the fucking last 15, 20 years or something, probably longer. I'm talking about asset creation, procedural asset creation through a machine learning mechanism. I don't even know about this yet. I know it exists. I haven't experimented with it. I'm going to make videos of it. But this motherfucker is a can of worms. Basically, you have a big database of all these great assets that you really love, and you tell the machine to mix and match them however it sees fit, and then it generates 500 of them, and you go through the whole list and pick the one that you want. And then you further refine it from there. Okay, machine learning is it's bonkers. I don't even know how to quantify it yet. I could see how it would be useful to ridiculous degrees, like stupidly ridiculous degrees. And I'm just talking in terms of asset creation. I want you to build me a machine gun, and it fucking looks at every machine gun model that you put in the database, and then it just mixes, matches, and makes something that's similar and generates 500 of them, and you pick the one that you want. Okay? That shit is going to... Fuck, whatever. I don't even know how to react. Now we also have this other thing. We have visual scripting. Okay, think about Kismet, right? Kismet was okay. I actually kind of hated it. I fucking hated Kismet. I don't like visual scripting languages. I was against Kismet. I was like, why didn't you just fucking let me program it? But then Blueprints came along, and that's a generation up. And now I'm fucking spending all my time with Blueprints. I actually prefer working with Blueprints over programming, even though I kind of know how to program. It just feels good. Now think about the leap between Kismet and Blueprints, and then think one more generation up. And then combine it with hierarchical instancing, multiplayer development environment, and procedural asset generation. So these 3D engines that the really big companies are using right now, are they still sounding as juicy? Because I'm starting to think a little bit differently. So you have all these things, and if somebody combined all of them at the same time, I don't know what to think about that. And let's also look at a little bit just take a sidestep to take a look at the state of brushes, right? Well, a lot of development companies that I've already worked at are part of the brush crew, if you would call them, the sect of the game industry that even knows what a fucking brush is. These are the ones that have all been affected by id Software and Epic, basically. Basically, these two companies are now just pushing brushes, or pushed them in the 90s, and they're not even supposed to be called brushes. It was a fucking mistake. We're not even supposed to call them that. But they're still around, and they're still being used in games like Call of Duty. They're not being used in Halo because Halo is built in Maya. The new id Tech is using Modo or something like that. It's using it, but they still have brushes for the outsides of the levels and stuff like that. I don't know if that's necessarily the case for Doom 4, but the current state of brushes right now is that they're horrible in every way, shape, and form. As far as I can tell, they really need to go away. And if they did, that would further improve things. So, like, what are the main problems with brushes right now? Well, one of the main things about brushes is that they cause a mentality that we have to intrude assets into the play space. See, every brush is an opaque shape. It's a main, like, it's something that you lay down the shape of the room, and then when the artist comes in, he has to, like, figure out how to, one, jam the models together so that they fit into that space, but the models also intrude into the space. And the only way to combat that is to either add more brushes and like push the walls back so that it's roughly the same shape. Brushes are really bad about this. It causes an environment where the play space is greatly affected once the art process actually happens. It's not so much that we're building block meshes in hopes that we can get an idea of the gameplay, but after the artist gets their hand on it and they have to make it look as good as a next generation game, where the fuck do brushes still stand on this front? Because half the time brushes are completely replaced or invisible because they're all hidden under meshes that are now intruding into the play space. And this is just something about brushes. And the other thing too, obviously, and I already kind of mentioned this about brushes, is that they are too easy for us to allow designers to build environments that don't make any sense with the models. Like, if we have these instanced objects that are a certain size, and okay, so I'm talking about yet another thing that's just been a holdover for a really fucking long time. So you're probably wondering, well, what would we do instead of brushes? I think we just need to have modeling tools in the fucking editor. Just bite the bullet. Basic mesh creation to make basic holes. In other words, we just work with polygons like we do in Max and Maya, and we're fucking done with it. And we're done. No more of this bullshit about using brushes. I just want to fucking like model something out and make the process really straightforward. And keep in mind that the assets have some kind of like a way for it to warn you if a room is a weird shape that won't work with any of the models that are available. In fact, like while you're building it, actually have like a way to see what models fit into these environments without intruding on the spaces. Because if you're working with just a collision hull and it's invisible, when you art it out, all of this special geometry, all of that fancy stuff can actually be on the outside, no longer protruding into the level geometry or playing space. I mean, I think we should have a modeling tool. Just fucking fess up, bite the bullet, and put a basic mesh modifying tool to make block meshes in the editing tools and ditch brushes. Okay, so with all of that said, the real question is, after all of this, are we really teetering on a possible perfect storm of development tools? Honestly, right now, I don't know. But I know it exists. I know that if all of these things are to be combined into one cohesive package, it could have absolutely like a ripple effect on everything. And we also have we have some companies that are just absolutely struggling to like get away from the you're just using the same old engine kind of shit that's going on. So I don't know at what point it's going to happen, but these companies have thousands and thousands of employed people per company, and a lot of them, some of them will have 200 people, some of them will have 1,000, some will have even more. Like, what happens when the higher ups see these new development tools, see somebody actually create this perfect little storm, and it ends up actually being a significant improvement, not just in terms of the technology itself, like what the visually what the engine can do, but it changes the entire mentality of the development process. Think about it. So we are actually potentially teetering on a perfect storm of development tools, and nobody's combining them all at once. Some people are doing some, not doing the rest. Nobody's doing them all at the same time. Not yet. I don't know what Source 2 is going to be like, but yeah. So it is something to keep in mind. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned for more Quake template.